It's time for a good story, ladies, gentlemen, and riders of all ages. Yesterday we had the reveal and announcement of Monster Hunter Stories 3 Twisted Reflection. The trailer that came with this had a lot to show, and today we'll be breaking down every single thing in detail. I've gone through it frame by frame, and I will call out anything that I thought was worth talking about. But before we do that, there are two other sources to talk about that many people may not even be aware of. First, and most importantly, because it provides a lot of context, there was a whole 3-paragraph press release put out about the game from Capcom themselves, and this gives us a lot to connect to within the actual trailer itself, so I'll just read it out to begin with. Monster Hunter Stories 3 Twisted Reflection tells the story of two nations on the path to ruin. Amidst the growing crystal encroachment facing the lands of Azura and Vermeil, the discovery of a mysterious egg gives cause for hope. From the shell hatches a monster long thought to be extinct, a Rathalos. However, this glimmer quickly gives way to despair as a second monster emerges from the egg. The twin Rathalos share the same mark as the twin skyscale Rathalos, portents of destruction that harken back to a civil war waged 200 years ago. As the environment deteriorates and monsters face extinction, the flames of war once again begin to stir. In this tale, players take on the role of the heir to Azura, blessed with special abilities leading them to become the leader of the Rangers and sole Rathalos rider in the kingdom. The protagonist passionately performs their duties, protecting monsters and investigating egg courts. However, a life-changing event soon drives them to investigate the strange phenomena threatening the world. In their search for truth, they set out for the Forbidden Land beyond the Northern Meridian. The hero is joined in their quest by Eleanor, Princess of Vermeil. Troubled by the worsening situation, she offers herself as a hostage to Azura in hopes of easing tensions between the two nations. Moved by the efforts of the Rangers, Eleanor and her cherished monstie Anjanath come along for the ride, seeking to uncover the true intentions of her sister, the Queen of Vermeil. Bound together by the encroaching shadow of calamity, they step into the torrent of fate and venture into forbidden ground. So there's honestly a lot to unpack there, which we will get into with the trailer visuals as well. But before we even do that, another slightly less looked upon source is the website for Monster Hunter Stories 3, which now exists, and this is mostly just a splash page with links to the trailer itself, but we have this important background image of a Rathalos wearing a crown, which definitely does seem like it matters. And of course we can see the logo for the game itself, which is the two Rathalos entangled by their tails around this sort of crystal in the middle, which would likely be the egg quartz mentioned within the press release related to the crystal encroachment. So now, let's go through the trailer itself step by step with all of that information. From the press release, we know that Rathalos, at least in this land, have been thought to be extinct, and so the discovery of this frozen Rathalos egg is an extremely big deal in this world, even before you know what is inside of the egg when it hatches. We can see that these two same characters here that discover the egg are the same ones from 55 seconds into the trailer due to the blue ponytail coming out of the helmet, and then the character on the left has a glowing crystal necklace that is reminiscent of the glowing enlarged horn on the Rathalos babies. We see a very similar, but definitely not the same, necklace later on at 1 minute 12 seconds with the character that I'm going to be labeling as Eleanor, the Princess of Vermeil, as it makes sense from everything we've seen. This stands to reason, then, that the character with the other crystal is actually the main protagonist. Our playable character has the one crystal that matches the crystal of the princess, and it is worth pointing out that for these two sort of characters right at the beginning, they do both have visible kinship stones on their hands, with the protagonist having it on their left hand and the other rider having it on their right hand. The protagonist is the leader of the Rangers, so presumably this other character would also be a ranger, and presumably these rangers are characters that ride flying monsties and scout out the lands. Maybe the second character is even second in command of the Rangers, but they are likely to be a close friend we have along with us in the journey regardless of their actual rank. As they are diving down them, we get a close-up of the main protagonist pauldron symbol, which is a big extra pointy looking Rathalos with a crystal in the middle, which matches the crystal in the game's logo. And a little bit of red marked under the symbol as well, under the crystal, which is clearly separated from the crystal, but also the only other colorful part of the symbol means that it's probably meaningful. It sort of looks like it could be a heart shape, but I might just be reading into the fact that it's red, and I find it interesting that the symbol is basically the game logo, but with one Rathalos instead of two. 2. And then of course it's also just randomly extra super pointy. The wing spikes on the bottom of the wings are very elongated. The feet even seem to have points coming out of them too, and this could just be a cool Rathalos-y type design, or it could be a representation of what previously happened 200 years ago with the skyscale Rathalos twins that are mentioned in the press release. The ones that quote unquote harken back to a civil war, maybe even the splitting of one nation into two. This part sounds to me sort of like the Story of Stories 2 Wings of Ruin, where Razewing Rathalos was misunderstood to be a walking calamity because of a situation with incomplete information being passed down. And I would bet that these skyscale Rathalos in the past, which seems to be the name of this specific type of Rathalos that we have here too, that these are misunderstood. They are thought to be an omen of bad things, but are in fact the thing that was created to sort of protect from bad things actually happening. While we're here then, we also see the protagonist Rathalos, and we see that it is one of the skyscale twins, the one that he rides specifically being the one with the larger horn on the right side of its head, which is maybe important to note for later on. And from now I'll be referring to the Rathalos with the big right side horn as Rightalos, and the one with the big left side horn as Leftalos, so try not to get too confused by that. This protagonist then, who's probably our player character, is the heir to the kingdom of Azura, the whole nation in war with Vermeil. Our friendly kingdom is theoretically what we see on this title splash screen here, confirmed by the symbol on the big main tower in the back being the same symbol that you have on the protagonist's left shoulder. Here we also see that the castle is on a large lake. There is a big green area out in the front, which is probably like an early game zone if I had to guess. It just sort of looks like a nice open field. And then there's the big icy mountainscape in the background, and that is likely where the egg was found to begin with, as well as the frozen raptors that we see in the trailer. And as we get to those raptors, it's worth noting that the ice in this area doesn't really look the way that ice would normally form. It is far more crystalline in nature, which brings us back to the idea of the crystal encroachment as the sort of calamity. So basically, this seems like it's a plague of cold that is just taking out everything in its wake, freezing it instantly the moment it touches it, changing the landscape, killing the monsters, and with the fact that they look completely like flash frozen, they don't look like it was a slow thing that happened, it looked like it was instant. I imagine it's very sudden when this happens too, which really drives home how dangerous the crystal encroachment is as a thing. And based on the exposition in the trailer itself, combined with the visual of how close the cold mountains are to the kingdom, the imminent threat here is that this encroachment will eventually cross over the kingdom itself and make it uninhabitable. As for why this has caused the wars with Vermeil, maybe they're trying to share the land, or maybe they're trying to ask for help and not getting it, it isn't quite made clear, it's not confirmed in any way, but I do have some speculations later on. The press release does say that the flames of war begin to stir, rather than being like fully already in place, so it seems like we are entering at the start of this war in theory, rather than starting from like the middle of a pre-existing war. Then on the next shot we see a bunch of riders chasing down what I believe is a new small monster for the series, which is quite exciting to see. We only see them running away from the rear, so we don't get much of a view of them, but they don't look quite like anything else that already exists in Monster Hunter. They are somewhat of a similar shape to Gown Goats from Sunbreak, or maybe even the Ceratinoth from Wilds, but they've got like these spiky, spiny things coming out of the tail that are sort of orange with a coloring that neither of those creatures has, so I'm banking on this one being a fully new creature. Another cool note on this frame though is that the monsters being ridden are not only armored, but very detailedly armored. You can see some armor on their thigh with some nice designs on it, then they have some plating on their heads as well, sort of like a helmet, which is quite cool. An interesting note, the knights here that are all using these monsters are all holding like actual medieval weaponry, like normal halberds, normal polearms. There's a guy with like a real world length longsword rather than like a Monster Hunter longsword. And I also don't see any kinship stones on any of these guys. That doesn't mean that they don't have kinship stones that are off screen, maybe on their other hand, maybe they're under their armor or something, but I just don't see any actively, and I think that's an interesting thing to point out about this group here. Despite the fact that their armor has the same symbol as our kingdom, so they are likely friendly, but probably not rangers. They are riding monsters, but they're using normal human weapons and no visible kinship stones, but the guy right behind the commander giving the order to fight, we only see like half of what he's holding in his hand for a split second, but it could be a hunting horn. It could also not be a hunting horn, but personally, I really love the idea of like the classic war trumpet battle fanfare being delivered by a giant hunting horn instead of a little trumpet. We can see these massive ballistas being fired as well. We don't see what they're firing them at, just the fact that they are firing them and that they are very large arrows coming out, so it does make me wonder what they are attacking. Then we have the protagonist fly by a tower with a lit beacon, maybe even a request for aid. The next shot appears to be the Azura soldiers once again, as they have the same symbol on their chest, but now they have bows, and specifically this is clearly the standard iron bow from the main Monster Hunter series, and they are shooting fire arrows at a Legiana that is being ridden. Interesting note here is that this is clearly not the same person riding this Legiana that we see riding a different Legiana at the beginning of the trailer. They have a fully different character design, and while this is purely speculation, in Monster Hunter Stories 2, the character Alwyn was a rider who rode a Legiana, and while his armor design didn't look like this character's, it looks very similar to Enna's armor from Monster Hunter Stories 2, so I could totally believe that this is actually Alwyn returning somehow, especially as when they show the character captured later on, they show him fully masked. They don't show them actually exposing any part of their face, which generally leads to some sort of a secret or hint or mystery. Next shot then is our first look at the Princess of Vermeil, Eleanor. This may be a bit of a stretch, but her eye color is very similar to the protagonist. And while she is blonde, he is still dirty blonde, which is pretty close, and given the whole theme of the game is the twin Rathalos, and that the direct translation of the Japanese name for the game is Twin Dragons of Destiny, or Twin Dragons of Fate, there is a very followable thread of twinness that perhaps the protagonist and the princess might be related in some way despite being the heir to two separate kingdoms. I mean, it would be a pretty solid twist if they were like twins that were separated at birth, both ended up raising one of these two twin Rathaloses for some reason, and then reunited as adults just like the Rathalos would be doing as well. It's also worth noting the banner in the background of the screen has that Azura Rathalos symbol on it too, so this is likely the specific scene mentioned in the press release where the princess is offering herself as a hostage to try and ease tensions between the nations. While she is talking about her people being driven into a corner, we see what is clearly a Rachna Kadaki attacking a village. Rise monsters are confirmed with this, and what a beautiful choice of one if I say so myself. The next shot is that same rider we were talking about earlier who is riding the Legiana and being shot at by flaming arrows. It's clearly the exact same character design. This time I want to add that the little badge on his chest does match that Azura Rathalos symbol that we keep seeing everywhere, but the people who shot him down in the previous scene had the same symbol. The people that are in the background in this scene still have the same symbol, so either both kingdoms do use the same symbol, which I guess is possible, as the press release talks about a civil war happening 200 years ago, so maybe when they split, they both kept using the same livery, or this is an unrelated scene perhaps to the one that we see him being shot at. Maybe this is the other nation, or third option entirely, they could just be a person that is being looked at as a traitor and being hunted down for whatever reason. We have the line that then pops up, I cross the meridian and keep going. Meridian being capitalized marks it as a specific named location within this world, and in the press release they mentioned setting out for the Forbidden Land beyond the Northern Meridian. My best guess is that this meridian refers to the specific line in the land, the environment itself, where the crystal encroachment has reached, the sort of the front line of the plague. And so we are breaching beyond that to investigate it and try and stop it, as well as the hopes that stopping the encroachment can end the war. We see purple explosions, which then of course leads to Magna Malo existing, who actually looks incredible in the Stories 3 art style. After the title screen we then see the egg actually first hatch and the Rathalos twins come out of it. Leftalos is the one that we see come out first, which is interesting given that our protagonist takes Rytalos. Leftalos looks like it might even be a little bit smaller than Rytalos, maybe it's just perspective though, but I could totally believe the idea of rival Rathalos being bigger than ours type of thing when they are fully grown. If they do go down the rival route, I feel like that could make sense. And of course it is worth mentioning, when these Rathalos are looking at each other, they are a perfect mirror image of each other, with not only the horns of course being a reflection rather than an identical similarity, but then also the wing pattern on them being a reflection. On one of them it is inverted, so that when they're staring at each other it is a perfect match, fitting the name of the game perfectly, and that's pretty much it honestly. That's the end of what we get in the trailer. With all the context from this and the press release combined, a couple of quick theories and speculations from me. My understanding of the main calamity within this game is it is a plague of cold slowly taking over the land from the north downwards. This cold is taking out various species of monsters along the way, causing them to go extinct. Egg quartz, my best guess, is a material that only forms on monster eggs that are caught within the encroachment. With this, perhaps this entire war is based on the fact that one faction might want to essentially mine the egg quartz, wants to use it for its power, maybe they view it as something valuable, while the other faction, probably our faction, is instead looking to stop the encroachment, to protect the monsters from actually getting taken in with it, to protect the eggs from getting caught within this. And so the war could be entirely based around one side wanting the crystal encroachments to end, and the other side trying to profit off of its existence. Maybe even to go really deep, getting lost in the sauce on this with a really crazy speculation, maybe the other one of the twin Rathalos, the ones that we don't see grown up, is being like powered up by the mining of this egg quartz from the other nation, the opposing kingdom trying to like make it into a war machine using this egg quartz. Well, our Rathalos is all natural. And then the whole conflict is about like the morality and the power of nature and friendship versus science and weird crystal plague magic using the death of some creatures to power up the one creature. But that's definitely reading very far into what we currently have. I'm just going off of the vibe more than anything. Also, just for the sake of mentioning it, Princess Eleanor's monstie, at least according to the press release, is an Anjanath, so that's going to be a lot of fun to have riding around with us as a buddy for the majority of the story. That just about does it for today then, everyone. Every detail currently out there about Monster Hunter Stories 2, and then that context applied to a frame-by-frame breakdown of the announcement trailer 2, and then some speculation and theories based on what we know as well. I hope you've all enjoyed this. Let me know what you think about my ideas, or what things that you think the game could be leading towards instead. I'd love to hear your own thoughts and speculation on it all, as honestly I'm just really excited about Monster Hunter Stories 3 as a whole. Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.